went to Manchester College, very caring Christian environment. There was the warm hand on the shoulder. But as I moved on, there was lots of people that were condescending and who had gone through a door and weren't going to oil it for anybody else. And I was misplaced. And that was a tough time in my life. But with God's grace, I managed to get through it. And some years ago, I give a talk about emotional intelligence, people skills. And Francis exemplifies this a lot in his book. And at the end of it, I yearn to say something about a Bible quote about Galatians 5:22, the fruits of the Spirit. And that would be a great result of someone trying to improve their emotional intelligence. Now, I left Manchester University with the desire to emulate my Christian professors that I met there. They were just wonderful, loving guys. And I thought it was a great way for me to commit my life, my Christian work, was to be that kind of a professor in a small Christian school. Now, I ended up not finding that kind of position in Indiana. And another thing God intervened with gave me the blessing of meeting a man at Purdue who became my mentor in textbook writing. Mike Keaty was his name, and we went on to write some 250 books together. Now that's padded because I'm counting the editions in there. There might be 50 original ones. And somewhere along the line, that book writing became my career, and I wasn't planning that. I thought my goal of being in that small school was just fine. Now, somewhere along the line of major success, or at least for me anyway, I started having the feeling that I didn't need God, and I was running the show, and he rocked me with a heart attack in 1998. And it was shortly thereafter that though I was a Christian from age 12 up till that time, I finally became passionate about my faith. And I started reading the Bible and other Christian literature with the view of improving myself spiritually. And by golly, in the Bible, I started encountering the numbers 7. And I remember that moment and saying to God, God, I'm just reading this to get closer to you, and you're going to give me math with it. What a treat. I'm ready to go. Well, that began an 8-year expedition of finding this application and finding this another application of math. And that resulted in this book called The Faith Equation. And it is mathematical evidence for Christianity, another way of saying it, or apologetics via mathematics. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of topics in there. Certainly, we can't do them all. One of the things that I say to people when they ask me why I read the Bible, what's the best reason? And I said prophecy. You can't have a book that satisfies so many prophecies and not believe in it. And the probability of just 9 of those prophecies are so close to 0 to make that happening and be a miracle. Now, then I went on to look for some other evidence, and I'm going to give you the topics that I think might be a little more fresh to you. I wanted to look at a passage in the Bible, Matthew 24:14. In effect, says, "And all the world will be evangelized," and analyze that situation mathematically. Find some models that fit it. What always disturbed me about my faith was that people would say, "All the world will be evangelized," but how in the world are we going to reach those people in the jungles and obscure places? And by Kelly, it's coming true with the advent of the Jesus film by Crew and the efforts of the social media in a positive way for the Bible. So I want to look at what actually has happened. And so I went back and was able to gather data all the way back to 1350. And a wonderful Christian man in my math department, who was a great statistician, helped me fit this data to curves. And I'll show you the graph here of the world population, and then the curve of evangelized population. And we also have a graph. Well, it's there. Okay, the graph. We also have a graph of the Christian population. Now, the thing that we really were excited about was that those curves crossed in 2063. Now, that's in the lifetime of a lot of people that might be at this conference, or especially of our students who are younger. And that tended to give me mathematical models that verified that prediction in the Bible. And it's a very unique application. Now, I got a byproduct here I wasn't expecting. In Revelation 21, it says that the world will never be all Christian. Well, if you follow that curve and see that it never intersects the world population, you see we get a throw in there. Something else I wanted to look at was the notion of the power of prayer. That was something else in my Christian faith early on that I questioned. What about prayer? Well, here I am, a mathematician. I'm always looking for applications, and but yet I would question prayer. I had some prayers answered, some prayers not, but somehow I always yearned for more evidence. And I can take you to the spot on the road when I was driving to my workout where I heard David Jeremiah give a talk on the radio about these two prayer studies, and that each of them had shown that prayer had worked. Those of you who are scientists know the notion of significant differences. Each of these studies got significant differences. Well, I was so excited about this, I pulled off the road. And the next day, I was in our library looking up those two studies and reading them over, and was able to talk to each of the people who did it on the phone and get some more information. Now, those two studies, which are statistical, of course, statistics is a branch of mathematics. I mean, that just did it for me. You know, I believed in prayer, but now I was really sold out. One of the studies was by a fellow named Bird. It was double blind, and there were no differences of these groups when they went into the hospital. There was a group split up for a prayer group and a group that was split off as a control group. They did not consent to the study before entry. They didn't know about it. And turned out there's a way to measure what a hospital stay is. These people were going into coronary care, and they can get a notion in medical called a severity score. And their severity score was significantly lower than those in the control group. Well, scientists and mathematicians love it when medical study or statistical studies replicate themselves. Well, a fellow named Harris, who's not a doctor, but he had doctors in his group, replicated this study in 1999 pretty closely. Notice his numbers were bigger, which is always great statistically. And again, he got significant lower severity scores after entry. So that was pretty good evidence to me. Now, in both cases, results significant, and prayer worked. And to me, after that, I think about once a week we ought to run a headline in the newspaper about prayer. And when I'm witnessing to people, I often use this way of going about it. I'll ask them, "Do you smoke cigarettes?" Now, hopefully they'll say no, but at least they know it isn't good for them. And I'll say, well, the same kind of statistics that have shown that you shouldn't smoke cigarettes because of the risk of lung cancer has shown that prayer worked. And so it's a message to consider it. Now, it turns out that at that time there was probably 100 studies done on the power of prayer, and not all of them worked, not all of them didn't. There isn't time for me to go into them very well, except to say two things. That some of these studies were not good. They were not very well done. And there was a study done by a group at Harvard some years ago. it was a study done by Harvard. I think it had $2.4 million that funded it, and they didn't get significant differences. Now, I'm going to stand up in this group and say, if you analyze that study, you'll find out that all of the people who did the prayer in that group were in a church called Unity. And I'm not here to bash them, except I don't believe that the decision for Christ in there is a decision of the heart, the will, and the mind. And it was a pretty loose kind of faith. So I just want to say that not all these studies are significant. So one other thing here, there was a fellow at Arizona State, incidentally, way back, who took all the prayer studies and put them together, the ones that were good anyway, quality, and he used a meta-analysis on them and found out from there that the prayer worked. That was his conclusion by other studies. Often you use a meta-analysis when studies are not producing significant differences. So that's some examples for you of how this book came about, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about some others.